dalle Alpi all'Oceano Indiano. Vincere!
Most people see a dictator and think they see a monster. But that is a mistake. To see a monster is to see something irrational. Mussolini was something far more dangerous. He was a stage manager. He understood that the human brain does not crave truth. It craves spectacle. He didn't believe in politics. He believed in the baptism of the ego. He looked at the chaos of post-war Italy and didn't see a crisis. He saw a blank stage. He knew that if you swell your chest, jut your jaw, and speak with the cadence of a god, people will stop looking for your credentials and start looking for your blessing. He didn't rule by law. He ruled by atmosphere. He was the first to realize that in the age of the camera, a leader is not a servant. He is a performer, and he was ready to turn the world into his theater, even if it meant burning the audience alive for a standing ovation. How does a radical socialist, a man who spent his youth preaching against the church, the king, and the army, suddenly become the champion of all three? It wasn't a change of heart. It was a calculated cannibalization. Mussolini's mind worked like a radar, constantly scanning for the heat of the masses. In 1914, he realized that socialism was too cold, too academic. It focused on the wallet. But nationalism? Nationalism focused on the soul. He saw the energy of the trench, the millions of soldiers returning from World War I, broken, angry, and looking for a target. His tactic was ideological fluidity. He realized that principles are just clothing. You change them to suit the weather. He abandoned his friends on the left, not because he disagreed with them, but because they were losing. He utilized the socialist tactics of agitation and combined them with the nationalist language of blood. He didn't care about being right. He cared about being the only option. He saw that the world was moving away from logic and toward the will. So he became the personification of that will. Mussolini did not seize power in a vacuum. He engineered the vacuum. His primary mind game was the cycle of manufactured salvation. He unleashed his black shirts, the squadristi, to beat professors, burn newspaper offices, and force-feed castor oil to opponents. Then, and this is the genius of his mind, he would go to the fearful middle class and say, "Look at this chaos. Only I can stop it." He was the arsonist selling the fire extinguisher. His calculation was simple. People will trade their freedom for order every single time, provided you make them scared enough. He didn't want to eliminate the chaos entirely. He wanted to keep it at a low simmer so that he remained permanently necessary. He utilized the fear of a Bolshevik uprising to justify his own violence. He played the king and the parliament like a grand master, making them believe that he was the lesser evil. By the time they realized he was the only evil, he had already moved into the palace. Mussolini's greatest tactic wasn't a policy. It was his physique. He understood the psychology of the alpha. He spent hours practicing his poses in the mirror. The hands on hips, the legs wide, the chin tilted to the sky. He was the first modern leader to realize that the masses think with their eyes, not their brains. He utilized physical domination. He would plow fields shirtless to show he was a man of the people, then fly a plane to show he was a man of the future. He didn't want you to agree with him. He wanted you to be exhausted by his energy. He turned the office of the Prime Minister into a 24-hour gym of power. If a diplomat came to see him, Mussolini would make them run across a massive hall just to reach his desk. It was a mind game of scale, making the visitor feel small, breathless, and weak before a single word was spoken. He was the architect of the strongman image that every dictator for the next 100 years would try to copy.
Why did he keep talking about the new Roman Empire? Because Mussolini knew that a nation without a myth is just a collection of people. But a nation with a myth is an army. He looked at the ruins of Rome and saw a psychological battery. He didn't care about history. He cared about the nostalgia of power. He utilized the Roman salute, the fasces, and the imperial eagle to plug into the subconscious of every Italian. He made them feel that their current poverty was just a temporary nap for a sleeping giant. This was his most effective mind game: temporal displacement. He convinced the people that they weren't living in 1930s poverty. They were living in the dawn of a new Caesar. By connecting his brand to the ghost of Rome, he made his critics look like they weren't just opposing a man, but opposing history itself. He didn't just rule Italy. He occupied its imagination. Mussolini's mind eventually met its match in Adolf Hitler. And here, the calculation becomes dark. Initially, Mussolini viewed Hitler as a clumsy student. He looked down on the Germans' racial theories as pseudoscience. But as Germany grew, Mussolini's ego forced him into a sunk-cost fallacy. He saw Hitler as a tool of leverage. He thought he could use the German threat to scare the British and French into giving him more territory. He didn't join Hitler out of love. He joined him out of fear of being left behind. His mind was so obsessed with being the main character of history that he couldn't stand the idea of Germany getting the spotlight. He calculated that the war would be short, and he could jump in at the last minute to sit at the victory table. It was a gambler's logic. He utilized the lives of Italian soldiers as chips in a game he didn't fully understand. He miscalculated the one thing a narcissist always ignores: the possibility of their own obsolescence. By 1943, the spectacle was over. The theater was empty. When the Grand Council turned on him, Mussolini's mind didn't break. It retreated into a new delusion. Even as a puppet of the Nazis in northern Italy, he kept writing, kept posing, kept pretending he was in charge. The end was the ultimate irony. A man who lived for the verticality of power, standing on high balconies looking down, ended his story horizontally. When he was captured by partisans and hung upside down in a gas station in Milan, it was the final, brutal cut to his performance. The people he had utilized for 20 years as stage props suddenly became the directors. They didn't just kill him, they desecrated the mask. They spat on the face that had spent decades practicing its God look. Benito Mussolini's mind was a masterclass in visual domination. He didn't rule Italy through logic or economy. He ruled through the aesthetics of force. He saw things not as they were, but as they could be used to enhance his own silhouette. He realized that if you give people a grand enough story, they will let you lead them to their own destruction. He was the first to realize that in the modern world, attention is the same thing as power. His story is a reminder that the most dangerous man in the room isn't the one with the biggest gun. It's the one who knows how to make you believe that his ego is your destiny.